I'm Nicole, 29, working as a financial analyst in Boston. Money was always a power tool in my family, used to control rather than support. Nothing prepared me for that moment when I checked my account and found it completely empty. $14,000 gone. My mother's smirking face as she said those words still haunts me. Now you'll know how to show off with your salary. She thought she'd broken me, but she had no idea what was coming. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family betray your trust and want to see how I turn this nightmare into my greatest victory. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, our family looked picture perfect from the outside. My parents, Margaret and Thomas, provided a comfortable upper-middle-class lifestyle. Mom worked as a successful real estate agent, while Dad was an accountant at a mid-sized firm in Hartford. My younger sister, Jessica, completed our family portrait, always seeming to effortlessly earn our mother's approval in ways I never could. Behind our white picket fence and perfectly manicured lawn, money was never just money. It was a weapon, a measuring stick, and most of all, a method of control. My mother tracked every dollar that moved through our household with meticulous precision, not just out of financial prudence, but as a way to maintain power over everyone. Money doesn't grow on trees, Nicole, became her mantra whenever I asked for anything, even necessities like school supplies. Meanwhile, Jessica would receive generous gifts simply for existing. The inequality was stark and deliberate. My father, though financially savvy in his professional life, surrendered all financial authority at home. "Your mother handles the finances," he would say with a defeated shrug whenever I questioned the unfairness. His passivity enabled my mother's financial manipulation to flourish unchecked. Family dinners often became performances where my mother would showcase her latest splurge on something visible to neighbors and friends. "The Andersons might have a pool, but they don't have Italian marble countertops," she would boast while serving dinner. These status symbols were sacred, while my request for SAT prep books was deemed excessive spending. I still remember my 12th birthday when relatives sent cards with small cash gifts. My mother collected them all, saying, "I'll put this in your college fund." Years later, I discovered no such fund existed. The money had simply disappeared into the family accounts my mother controlled. This environment taught me early that financial independence would be my only path to freedom. While other teenagers were spending allowance money on mall trips and movies, I began secretly saving. At 14, I started babysitting for neighbors, carefully hiding portions of my earnings in a hollowed-out book on my shelf. By 16, I had landed a tutoring job at the local library, helping younger students with math. The library paid in checks, which became a problem, since I couldn't cash them without my mother knowing. I confided in Mrs. Parker, the head librarian, who helped me open a student account with minimal paperwork. This became my first real taste of financial autonomy. My mother discovered this arrangement when a bank statement accidentally came to our house. "Stingy and secretive," she labeled me during the ensuing argument. "Why would you need your own account unless you're hiding something? What kind of daughter keeps secrets from her mother?" The real confrontation came later that year, when I wanted to use some of my savings for a school science trip to Washington, D.C. The trip cost $400, and I had saved nearly $600. "Absolutely not," my mother declared. "That money should be going towards something practical, not wasted on a glorified vacation." "But I earned it myself," I argued. "It's my money." Her laugh still echoes in my memory. "Your money. You're 16. Nothing is yours yet. Everything you have is because your father and I allow it." That night, I overheard my parents arguing. My father's rare attempt to advocate for me was quickly squashed. "She needs to learn the value of money," my mother insisted. "Spending hundreds of dollars on a trip is exactly the kind of financial irresponsibility I won't encourage." I didn't get to go on that trip, but the incident crystallized something important: I would need to become completely financially independent from my family. This goal became my North Star through the rest of high school. The college selection process brought these dynamics to a breaking point. My mother had her heart set on me attending Westfield University, a prestigious private college where several of her clients' children went. The annual tuition was staggering. "We'll make it work," she insisted, though she never specified how. I suspected she wanted the status of having a daughter at Westfield more than she cared about my education or future debt. Meanwhile, I had been researching state universities with strong finance programs and scholarship opportunities. When I announced my decision to attend the state university with a partial merit scholarship, my mother didn't speak to me for 3 days. "You're throwing away opportunities to be common," she finally said. "Don't come crying to us when your state school degree doesn't open the right doors." Her words stung, but they also strengthened my resolve. I would build my future on my terms, not as an accessory to my mother's social climbing ambitions. Little did I know how much this decision would escalate the financial power struggle between us, ultimately leading to that fateful day when I discovered my account completely emptied. College became my first real taste of independence. At State University, I created a life entirely of my own design, free from my mother's constant financial scrutiny. I declared a finance major partly due to genuine interest, and partly because I was determined to master the subject my mother had weaponized throughout my childhood. While many students use their newfound freedom to socialize and explore, I worked relentlessly. Beyond my full course load, I secured a position at the University Financial Aid Office, helping other students navigate scholarship applications and loan paperwork. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was becoming an expert in the financial systems my mother had always kept mysterious and exclusionary. Weekends and summers meant additional jobs. I waited tables at a popular campus restaurant where the tips were reliable. During breaks, I interned at a local accounting firm building both my resume and my savings account. My roommate Tara often worried I was missing out on the college experience. "You're going to work yourself into the ground," she'd say, trying to convince me to join weekend activities. "College is supposed to be about more than just working and studying." She wasn't entirely wrong, but financial freedom felt more important than parties. "I'll have time for fun when I'm not dependent on anyone," I would reply. Tara didn't fully understand coming from a family where money was discussed openly and shared generously. Despite my determination, I couldn't completely escape my mother's influence. Each holiday break brought tension as I returned to Connecticut. My mother would interrogate me about my spending habits, my bank balance, and my career plans, all while reminding me how a Westfield degree would have positioned me better. "Sarah Matthews' daughter just got an internship at Goldman Sachs," she'd announce over Christmas dinner. Of course, Westfield alumni have connections everywhere. Meanwhile, my sister Jessica followed the prescribed path, attending our mother's alma mater and calling home regularly for extra money, which was always provided without question. The contrast in our treatment couldn't have been more stark. By junior year, I had managed to save almost $3,000 while keeping my student loans minimal. My careful budgeting meant living frugally, but the growing balance in my account gave me a sense of security I'd never felt under my parents' roof. Graduation approached with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Unlike many of my classmates, I had secured a job offer before graduation day at a financial consulting firm in Boston. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but the company had excellent growth potential. And most importantly, it meant I could remain completely independent from my family. "Boston?" my mother questioned when I shared the news. "Why not New York or Hartford? You'd be closer to home." What she meant was I'd be closer to her influence. "Boston is where the opportunity is," I replied firmly, "and the cost of living is more manageable for a starting position." My father, in a rare moment of assertiveness, actually congratulated me. "She's being smart about her finances, Margaret," he said. "Boston is a good market right now." The look my mother gave him could have frozen water, but I treasured that small moment of validation. After graduation, I moved into a tiny apartment in Boston with 2 roommates. The space was cramped and the building had seen better days, but it was affordable and entirely my own. I set up automatic transfers from each paycheck, building my savings methodically, while also creating my first investment portfolio, with guidance from more experienced colleagues. Those first years in Boston taught me more about finance than my entire college education. I learned to navigate health insurance options, retirement planning, and tax strategies. Each new piece of knowledge felt like reclaiming ground that had been denied to me growing up. My relationship with my family remained strained but intact. I visited Connecticut for major holidays and occasional weekends, maintaining the minimum contact needed to avoid a complete rupture. These visits inevitably ended in arguments about money, with my mother criticizing everything from my career choice to my apartment. You could afford a better place if you weren't hoarding money like a squirrel, she commented during one visit. What's the point of working in finance if you live like you're poor? She never understood that my modest lifestyle wasn't about deprivation, but about choice and long-term planning. By my third year in Boston, my careful management had grown my savings to $14,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it represented freedom and countless hours of hard work. The balance had a purpose too. Boston's real estate market was challenging, but I had been researching condos in emerging neighborhoods, planning for a down payment. Property ownership would be my next step toward complete financial independence. Then came the medical emergency that changed everything. My father called one Friday evening, his voice uncharacteristically shaken. "Your mother collapsed at an open house," he explained. "They think it might be her heart. We're at Hartford Hospital." I drove to Connecticut, immediately finding my father and sister in the waiting room looking lost. My mother had suffered what turned out to be a severe panic attack, not a heart problem as initially feared. During the 2-day hospital stay, bills and insurance forms needed immediate attention. "Nicole, your mother keeps all the login information in her phone," my father explained helplessly. "The insurance portal needs access now, and I don't know any of the passwords." In a moment of compassion that I would later deeply regret, I shared my own banking login details with my mother so she could show my father how to navigate financial portals. "It's similar to most banking sites," I explained, walking them through the interface on my laptop. My mother recovered quickly, and in the relief of the moment, I forgot something crucial: I never changed my password afterward. This oversight would cost me $14,000 and teach me the hardest financial lesson of my life. Tuesday, April 14th began like any ordinary workday. Spring sunshine streamed through my office windows as I reviewed client portfolios and prepared for an afternoon meeting. During lunch break, I decided to check my accounts planning to calculate exactly how much more I needed for a solid condo down payment. The screen loaded, and for a moment I thought there must be a technical glitch, where my balance of $14,080.67 should have been a single digit stared back at me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I frantically checked my transaction history. There it was, a single transfer timestamped 7:43 a.m. that morning, withdrawing the entire balance. The recipient account number wasn't immediately familiar, but the bank name was my parents' local institution in Connecticut. "This has to be fraud," I told myself, already dialing customer service with shaking hands. The representative was sympathetic, but delivered devastating news. The transfer had been properly authenticated, using my credentials from a recognized device with no signs of hacking. It appeared legitimate from their perspective. "Can you at least tell me who owns the recipient account?" I asked desperately. "I can confirm it's a joint account under the names Thomas and Margaret Lawson," she replied after security verification. My parents' account, my mother's doing. I tried calling my mother immediately, but her phone went straight to voicemail. My father's phone rang unanswered. Even Jessica didn't pick up. The silence felt orchestrated, intensifying my panic. My supervisor, Jordan, noticed my distress as I returned to my desk. "Everything okay, Nicole? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Family emergency," I managed to say. "I might need to leave early." "Take whatever time you need." He offered genuine concern in his eyes. If only he knew the full story. By 3 p.m., I'd still reached no one in my family. Finally, I tried my parents' landline, which my father answered on the fourth ring. "Dad, what's going on? Mom emptied my bank account this morning, $14,000 gone. I need to speak with her now." His hesitation told me everything. "Nicole, I think you should come home and discuss this in person. Your mother feels you've been making some questionable financial decisions lately." "Questionable? It's my money that I earned. This is theft." "That's a very harsh word to use about your mother," he replied, his voice strained. "She's just concerned about your priorities." I left work immediately, driving the 2 hours to Connecticut in a state somewhere between rage and disbelief. The familiar streets of my hometown now seemed threatening as I pulled into my parents' driveway. My mother's car was their confirmation she'd been deliberately avoiding my calls. She opened the door before I could knock, her expression a mixture of defiance and something else, satisfaction. "Where is my money?" I demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "Come inside, Nicole. The neighbors don't need to hear family business. The living room felt suffocating as my father sat awkwardly on his recliner, while Jessica perched on the sofa arm looking uncomfortable but silent. I asked you a question, Mom. Where is my $14,000? Safe, she replied coolly. Unlike what you were planning to do with it. A condo at your age in this market, financially irresponsible. The realization hit me like a physical blow. You've been reading my emails, how dare you? A mother keeps track of her children's well-being, she replied, as if invading my privacy was her right. You've always been reckless with money, even while pretending to be so responsible. Reckless, I've supported myself completely since graduation. I've never asked you for a dime. And that's exactly the problem. Her voice rose as her composure slipped. You act like you're above the family with your fancy Boston job and your precious savings, always showing off your independence, making your father and me feel obsolete. Margaret, my father interjected weakly, perhaps we should— No, Thomas. She needs to hear this. My mother stepped closer to me. You've been looking down on us, judging our financial choices while flaunting your so-called success. Now you'll know how to show off with your salary. Now you'll learn some humility when you can't run off and buy property without even consulting your family. I struggled to comprehend the twisted logic. Consulting you, I'm 29 years old. I don't need permission to use money I earned. The money is going toward a family vacation to Europe this summer, she announced. Something you would never have agreed to fund with your selfish priorities. This way we can finally be together as a proper family. A vacation. You stole my down payment for a vacation I didn't agree to. Jessica finally spoke up. Mom, I didn't know that's what the money was for. You said Nicole had agreed. Be quiet, Jessica, our mother snapped. Nicole needs to understand that family comes before property investment. She'll thank me later when she has memories instead of mortgage payments. I looked at my father, searching for any sign of support. Dad, do you agree with this? Do you think it's okay to steal $14,000 from your daughter? His eyes couldn't meet mine. Your mother feels this is best for the family unity. You've been very distant since moving to Boston. Distant? I wonder why, I said bitterly. And now you've given me 14,000 more reasons to stay away. Don't be dramatic, my mother dismissed. It's not like you're destitute. You have a job. You can save it all again if having your own money is so important to you. In that moment, looking at my mother's satisfied expression, something broke inside me. Not just trust, but the last remnant of hope that she might someday see me as an autonomous person deserving of respect. I want my money back, I stated flatly. All of it today, or I'm going to the police and reporting it as theft. My mother actually laughed. Go ahead, tell them your mother accessed an account you gave her the password to. See how seriously they take that. She was partially right, and we both knew it. I had voluntarily shared my login during her hospital stay, creating a legal gray area that would be messy to navigate. This is who you really are, I said quietly, the full weight of the betrayal settling over me. You'd rather destroy your relationship with your daughter than let her succeed on her own terms. I turned and walked out, ignoring my mother's calls to stop being childish and my father's weak pleas to work this out as a family. In my car, the tears finally came hot and furious. $14,000, 3 years of careful saving, my independence, all gone in a single morning because I'd made the mistake of trusting my mother during a moment of vulnerability. As I drove back to Boston, I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about control, and my mother had just made her most aggressive move yet in our lifelong power struggle. She expected me to break, to come crawling back begging for financial help. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. If there was one thing I knew with absolute certainty as the miles passed beneath my tires, it was this: I would rebuild from nothing before I gave her that satisfaction. The drive back to Boston remains a blur in my memory, tears obscuring the highway signs as I struggled to process what had just happened. By the time I reached the city limits, one thing had become clear. I couldn't face returning to my apartment, where every corner held reminders of my careful financial planning now shattered. Instead, I called Amanda, a coworker, who had become a friend over shared lunches and happy hours. Can I crash on your couch tonight? I asked, my voice still thick with emotion. I'll explain when I get there. Amanda's one-bedroom apartment in Somerville became my refuge that night as I spilled the entire story over a glass of wine that neither of us touched. Her expression shifted from shock to outrage as I detailed my mother's betrayal. Nicole, that's not just morally wrong, it's illegal, she insisted. Family or not, she stole from you. She claims I gave her access, I replied numbly, during her hospital stay. For a specific purpose, not to clean out your life savings. You need to talk to a lawyer like yesterday. The following morning, I forced myself to go to work maintaining a facade of normalcy, while my internal world collapsed. Rent was due in 10 days. My emergency fund, which I'd foolishly kept in the same account, was gone. The careful financial safety net I'd built had vanished overnight. During lunch break, I followed Amanda's advice and called a legal aid office. The consultation was brief but illuminating. Yes, what my mother did could constitute theft, despite the family relationship. No recovery might not be simple, especially since I had voluntarily shared access at one point. Legal proceedings would be costly, time-consuming, and would permanently damage family relationships. Think carefully about whether pursuing this legally is worth the potential outcomes, the attorney advised. Sometimes the emotional and financial cost of fighting exceeds the amount in dispute. His words struck a painful chord. Was I prepared to legally battle my own mother? To sit in court and testify against her? The thought made me physically ill, even as the injustice burned inside me. Days passed in a fog of shock and indecision. I borrowed $800 from Amanda to cover immediate expenses, a humiliating reversal for someone who had prided herself on financial independence. The loan came with her insistence that I stay with her until things stabilized. It's just a sofa, but it's free, she said firmly, and I have an extra key made for you already. My phone filled with missed calls and messages from my parents and Jessica. I ignored them all, unable to face another conversation where my feelings and autonomy would be dismissed. Each notification spike felt like another small betrayal. Work became increasingly difficult as my concentration fractured. Spreadsheets blurred before my eyes. Client meetings required superhuman effort to stay present. Jordan, my supervisor, finally called me into his office after I missed a crucial deadline. "Whatever's going on, Nicole, it's affecting your performance," he said gently. "Is there anything the company can do to help? We have employee assistance programs." I mumbled something about family issues and promised improvement, too ashamed to admit the truth. Financial analysts weren't supposed to get robbed by their own mothers. We were supposed to be too smart, too careful for such vulnerabilities. The crisis deepened when my car, a 10-year-old Honda I'd maintained, meticulously developed transmission problems. The repair estimate of $1,200 might as well have been $12 million. Public transportation could get me to work, but the unexpected complication felt like the universe piling on. Rock bottom arrived 3 weeks after the theft. Sitting on Amanda's sofa late one night, spreadsheet open on my laptop as I tried to figure out how to rebuild from zero, I finally broke completely. Sobs racked my body as the full magnitude of my situation crashed over me. Amanda found me there, curled around my computer, like it contained the last remnant of my former life. She sat silently beside me, hand on my shoulder, until the storm passed. "You need to tell people at work," she said finally. "Not everyone, but someone besides me who can help." The next day, depleted and desperate, I asked Michael, our team's senior analyst, if we could speak privately. Michael had always seemed stable and trustworthy, with 15 years at the company and a reputation for discretion. In the small conference room, words tumbled out before I could censor them. "My mother stole my entire savings," I confessed, describing the whole situation through intermittent tears. "I've been trying to handle it alone, but I'm drowning." Michael's response surprised me. Instead of awkward sympathy or dismissal, he listened intently, asking occasional clarifying questions. When I finished, he didn't offer platitudes about family reconciliation or moving on. "This is financial abuse," he stated plainly, "and you're not the first person I've known to experience it. My ex-wife's parents did something similar before we were married." His matter-of-fact assessment somehow made the situation feel less isolating, less shameful. For the first time since discovering my emptied account, I felt a flicker of something beyond despair recognition that this wasn't my fault. "What did your ex-wife do?" I asked tentatively. "She rebuilt from scratch, but more importantly, she created systems they could never access again." A small smile crossed his face. "Actually, she became a financial security specialist because of it. Would you like her number? She sometimes consults on cases like yours." That conversation marked a turning point. I left the conference room still broke, still homeless, except for Amanda's couch still betrayed, but with the first fragile elements of a plan forming in my mind. As I walked back to my desk, my phone buzzed with another call from my mother. For weeks, I'd been ignoring these calls too raw to engage. This time, something shifted in my perspective. My mother expected me to come crawling back financially broken and emotionally defeated. She was waiting for my surrender, my acknowledgement of dependence. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Not now, not ever. Instead, I would rebuild everything she had taken better and stronger than before. And I would do it without her ever knowing until it was complete. This wasn't just about recovering money anymore. It was about reclaiming power she had tried to steal along with my savings. The plan crystallizing in my mind wasn't just financial recovery, it was my declaration of independence. The following Saturday, I met with Diane Michaels' ex-wife at a quiet coffee shop in Cambridge. A sharp-featured woman in her 40s with prematurely silver hair, she exuded the confidence of someone who had rebuilt herself from scratch. "So your mother cleared out your account?" she summarized after hearing my story. "And now you're starting over from zero." "Negative, actually," I admitted. "I owe Amanda rent money and my car needs repairs I can't afford." Diane nodded thoughtfully. "Before we talk numbers, let's talk strategy. What do you think your mother expects you to do now?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on my own next steps that I hadn't considered my mother's expectations. "She thinks I'll come back begging," I realized aloud. "She's waiting for me to admit I need her help, that I can't survive without the family safety net." "Exactly," Diane confirmed. "This was never about the money itself. It was about forcing you back into a dependent position." She leaned forward, eyes intense. "So your first strategic decision, will you give her what she wants?" "Never," I said immediately. A smile flashed across her face. "Then let's build you a financial fortress they can never breach again." Over the next 2 hours, Diane helped me create a comprehensive recovery plan. First, I would open new accounts at an entirely different bank, with enhanced security protocols, including two-factor authentication, and no telephone access without a special verbal password. "Financial independence isn't just about having money," Diane explained. "It's about controlling access to that money." Next came budgeting at a level of detail I'd never attempted before. Every dollar was assigned a purpose, with priority given to rebuilding an emergency fund in a separate hidden account. "3 months of living expenses is your first goal," Diane instructed, "before investing, before anything else. Without that buffer, you're vulnerable to having to ask for help." The hardest part of the plan involved increasing my income dramatically. Beyond requesting extra projects at work for potential bonuses, I would need additional income streams. Diane suggested freelance financial consulting for small businesses and individuals' work I could do evenings and weekends. "Your education and day job experience make you qualified," she pointed out, "and the financial advisory market has low barriers to entry for basic consulting." By the end of our meeting, I had a detailed 6-month recovery plan, and something even more valuable, a sense of agency. For the first time since the theft, I felt like I was taking control rather than merely reacting to disaster. "One last thing," Diane said as we gathered our belongings. "You need to decide how to handle communication with your family during this process." This was the aspect I'd been avoiding thinking about. Part of me wanted to cut contact entirely, but another part recognized the strategic advantage in maintaining some connection. "If I disappear completely, my mother will know she's pushed too far," I reasoned. "But if I stay in limited contact, she might believe she's winning." Diane finished my thought. "Which could be useful." That night, I made my first counter move in what I now viewed as a strategic game rather than just a personal tragedy. After weeks of silence, I called my parents' house, timing it for when I knew they'd both be home. My mother answered immediately. "Nicole, finally, we've been so worried." I pitched my voice to sound defeated and slightly desperate. I need some time to figure things out. My budget is a mess now, and I'm staying with a friend temporarily. The satisfaction in her voice was barely concealed. Well, these are the learning experiences that help us grow up, aren't they? Sometimes we need to face consequences to appreciate what we have. I swallowed my rage, focusing on the long game. I just wanted you to know I'm okay. Struggling, but okay. When you're ready to discuss coming home for a while to regroup, we're here, she offered magnanimously, as if she hadn't created this crisis herself. Family is always the safest harbor in a storm. After hanging up, I had to step outside Amanda's apartment and scream into my jacket to release the tension. The performance had worked. My mother believed she had won. She had no idea I was already executing a plan to render her power play completely ineffective. The following weeks became a blur of constant motion. By day, I performed my regular analyst duties while volunteering for additional projects. Evenings and weekends transformed into a second work life, as I launched a bare-bones financial consulting service targeting young professionals and small business owners who couldn't afford established firms. My first clients came through Amanda and Michael's network's friends needing help with debt repayment strategies, coworkers looking to optimize retirement contributions. I charge below market rates to build a client base, quickly trading immediate income for reviews and referrals. Amanda's couch remained my home base despite her generous offer to make it a more permanent arrangement. The discomfort keeps me motivated, I explained when she suggested I bring more belongings from my old apartment, which I'd given up to save money. Every night on this sofa is fuel for rebuilding faster. Monthly calls with my family became exercises in strategic deception. I carefully constructed an image of someone slowly recovering but still struggling financially. When my mother mentioned the European vacation being planned with my stolen money, I forced myself to respond with bland well wishes rather than accusations. It sounds wonderful, I said, grip tightening on my phone until my knuckles whitened. I hope you all have a great time. 4 months into my rebuilding process, an unexpected ally emerged. Jessica called from a number I didn't recognize, explaining she'd borrowed a friend's phone to reach me privately. Mom checks my call history, she explained, but I needed to talk to you without her knowing. Our conversation revealed dimensions to the situation I hadn't considered. Jessica had believed my mother's initial claim that I had agreed to contribute to the family vacation. Only later did she discover the money had been taken without my knowledge. She tells everyone you're learning financial responsibility, Jessica reported, that you made risky investments and she saved your money from being lost completely. The revelation stung but wasn't surprising. Of course, my mother would create a narrative that positioned her as the hero rather than the villain. There's more, Jessica continued hesitantly. She never intended to keep all your money permanently. The plan was to hold it until you learned your lesson, then return most of it with conditions like you moving back closer to home. This insight into my mother's thinking provided a crucial advantage. She expected me to struggle much longer to reach a breaking point where I would accept her terms for returning my own money. She had no idea I was already well on my way to replacing it entirely. Jessica became my covert informant, providing updates on family discussions and plans. When she reported that our mother frequently checked online to see if I was acquiring new debt or making desperate financial moves, I carefully ensured that nothing visible in my credit report would contradict the struggling image I was projecting. 6 months after the theft, my financial situation had transformed dramatically. My emergency fund had reached $4,000, not nearly my previous savings, but enough to provide essential security. My client base had grown to 15 regular consulting relationships, generating income that nearly matched my day job. Then came the breakthrough that accelerated everything. Jordan called me into his office on a Wednesday afternoon, closing the door with uncharacteristic formality. The Simpson account presentation you developed last month impressed everyone, including the client, he began. They've specifically requested you as lead analyst on their portfolio going forward, which means a promotion is in order. The salary increase that accompanied the promotion was substantial, nearly 20%. Combined with my consulting income, my earning power had nearly doubled from pre-theft levels. I maintained my frugal lifestyle despite the increased income, channeling every extra dollar into rapidly rebuilding savings. By the 8-month mark, my new account balance had surpassed $10,000. By 10 months, it exceeded $20,000, surpassing what had been stolen. Watching the numbers grow provided a satisfaction that went beyond financial security. Each dollar represented a direct refutation of my mother's attempt to control me through money. I was proving to myself most of all that her power over me was an illusion I could dispel through my own efforts. The emotional healing proved more challenging than the financial recovery. Weekly sessions with a therapist specializing in family trauma helped me process the betrayal and examine the lifelong patterns that had led to it. I learned to identify and dismantle unhealthy financial beliefs instilled during childhood, that money should be secretive, that financial independence was selfish, that family entitled automatic access to personal resources. "You're not just rebuilding savings," Dr. Lawton observed during one session. "You're constructing a completely new relationship with money, one based on openness and health, rather than control and fear." These insights extended beyond my family situation. I began developing financial literacy workshops focused specifically on women recognizing and escaping financial control, first offering them pro bono at community centers, then incorporating them into my growing consulting business. My reputation at work evolved as well. Where once I'd been seen as merely competent and reliable, I was now viewed as an innovative problem solver with leadership potential. Being included in management discussions provided another layer of security and professional growth. Throughout this transformation, I maintained the appearance of financial struggle in communications with my family. Monthly calls continued, each one an exercise in restraint, as I listened to vacation stories funded by my stolen savings. During one such call, my mother mentioned casually, "We've been thinking you might want to move back to Hartford. Thomas knows someone at his firm who could help you get a position. Nothing fancy, but steady work while you get back on your feet." The offer, clearly designed to bring me back under direct supervision, confirmed Jessica's intelligence about my mother's long-term plan. She expected me to reach a breaking point where such an arrangement would seem necessary rather than insulting. "I'll think about it," I replied noncommittally, already knowing I would never consider it. What my family didn't know was that I had been quietly viewing condominiums again this time, with a stronger financial position than before the theft. The Boston market had actually softened slightly, creating better opportunities than had existed the previous year. When I found the perfect two-bedroom unit in an emerging neighborhood with excellent investment potential, I moved quickly. My credit score had recovered completely, and my income history, including documented consulting earnings, satisfied the mortgage underwriters. The day I signed the closing documents, sitting alone at a title company conference table, as the property officially became mine, I felt a sense of completion that transcended the financial milestone. I had not only recovered what was stolen, but had transformed it into something stronger, more secure, and entirely my own. As I tucked the keys to my new home into my pocket, I made a decision. The charade had served its purpose, but it was time for truth. The upcoming Thanksgiving gathering would be when my family learned exactly what their betrayal had produced. Not a dependent daughter crawling home, but a woman who had turned their cruelty into her greatest strength. Thanksgiving arrived with perfect dramatic timing. Almost exactly 1 year had passed since the theft, and my transformation was complete. Standing before the mirror in my new condo, I deliberately chose an outfit projecting quiet success, a simple but obviously well-made charcoal dress, subtle jewelry, and the confident posture of someone wholly comfortable in her skin. The 2-hour drive to Connecticut gave me time to rehearse what I would and wouldn't say. My goal wasn't vengeance, but clarity, establishing undeniable boundaries that would protect me going forward. The stolen money was gone, used for a vacation I never agreed to. This wasn't about recovering those funds, but about reclaiming my narrative. My parents' house looked exactly as it always had: holiday decorations, precisely arranged to create an impression of perfect family harmony. Jessica's car was already in the driveway when I arrived. She knew what was coming, having been my confidant throughout the rebuilding process, but had promised to act surprised for maximum effect. "Nicole?" My mother opened the door with practiced warmth, as if the past year of manipulation had never happened. "You look well." The slight pause revealed her assessment of my appearance, which clearly didn't align with the struggling daughter she expected. My father emerged from the living room awkward as always in emotional situations. Good to have you home, Nicole. I'm just visiting Dad, I corrected gently. My home is in Boston now. The subtle emphasis wasn't lost on my mother, whose smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Jessica appeared next, giving me a quick hug with a whispered, "Ready," in my ear. Dinner proceeded with excruciatingly polite conversation about safe topics, the weather, distant relatives' neighborhood changes. My mother dominated, as usual, carefully steering around any mention of my financial situation. I allowed this, waiting for the moment she would inevitably bring it up herself. It came during dessert, as she served pumpkin pie with deliberate portions. "So, Nicole, have you given any more thought to what we discussed? About possibly relocating closer to family?" The opening I'd been waiting for. I set down my fork and smiled. "Actually, I've made some significant changes recently. Would you like to see photos of my new place?" Without waiting for a response, I retrieved my phone and pulled up images of my condo. The spacious living room with large windows, the updated kitchen with quartz countertops, the second bedroom converted to a home office where I conducted my consulting business. My mother's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief as she swiped through the photos. "This is yours, you're renting this?" "I closed on it 3 weeks ago," I replied calmly. 30% down payment, 30-year fixed mortgage at a very competitive rate. The silence around the table was absolute. My father stared at the photos, then at me, comprehension slowly dawning. Jessica suppressed a smile behind her napkin. "That's not possible," my mother finally said, her voice unusually small. "You lost everything. You've been struggling all year." "Actually, I've been quite successful." I met her eyes directly. "After you emptied my account, I rebuilt my savings to over $20,000 in 10 months. I received a significant promotion at work, and I started a financial consulting business that now serves 26 regular clients." The color drained from my mother's face as the implications sank in. Her year-long victory had been an illusion. The power she thought she'd established had never existed. "You lied to us," she accused, finding her voice again. "All those calls saying you were just getting by. I let you believe what you wanted to believe," I corrected. "Just like you let people believe you saved my money from risky investments rather than admitting you stole it." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Nicole, stole is a very harsh—" "It's the accurate term, Dad," I interrupted firmly. "Taking $14,000 from someone's account without permission is theft, whether it's family or not. I could have pursued it legally, but I chose to rebuild instead." "Well," my mother attempted to recover her tone, shifting to one I recognized from childhood, the voice that rewrote reality to maintain her position. "I always knew you would land on your feet. That was the point of the lesson after all, to show you that you could recover from financial setbacks." The audacity of this revision was breathtaking. Jessica made a small choking sound caught between laughter and disbelief. "Let's be very clear," I said, my voice level but firm. "What you did wasn't a lesson. It was a violation. You expected me to come crawling back dependent and defeated. Instead, I created something better than what you took." "We were going to give most of it back," my mother insisted, deflating slightly as her narrative crumbled. "After the vacation, once you understood the importance of family priorities." "I understand priorities perfectly now," I replied, "and I've come to set some boundaries going forward. First, you will never have access to any of my financial information again. No accounts, no passwords, no discussion of numbers at all." My mother's mouth opened to object, but I continued without pause. "Second, our relationship can continue, but only with complete respect for my autonomy. I'm not a child to be taught lessons. I'm an adult who makes her own decisions." "And if we don't agree with these boundaries," my mother challenged, though her usual confidence had evaporated. "Then we don't have a relationship," I stated simply. "That's your choice to make." The finality of this statement hung in the air. My father, who had remained largely silent, finally spoke. "Nicole, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" We stepped onto the back porch, the November air crisp around us. For several moments, he just stood there, looking older than I remembered. "I should have stopped her," he said finally. "When she showed me what she'd done with your account, I knew it was wrong. I told myself it was between you two, that I shouldn't interfere in your mother's parenting." I'm 29, Dad. Well past the parenting stage. He nodded, shoulders slumping. I've enabled her control for so long with you and with everything else, watching you stand up in there. He paused, gathering himself. I'm sorry. Truly sorry for my part in what happened. The apology, though late, felt genuine. Thank you for saying that, I responded, realizing that while I couldn't forget what had happened, holding on to anger would only limit my own freedom. Your condo looks wonderful, he added awkwardly. Maybe I could visit sometime, see Boston a bit. The olive branch was small, but significant. I'd like that, Dad. When we returned inside, the atmosphere had shifted. My mother sat rigidly at the table, Jessica beside her, looking simultaneously concerned and relieved. The confrontation had changed something fundamental in our family dynamic, though the full implications would take time to unfold. I left earlier than planned, promising Jessica we'd talk soon, and exchanging a tentative hug with my father. My mother remained distant, struggling to process her loss of control. Whether our relationship would survive in any meaningful form remained uncertain, but for the first time the decision felt truly mine to make. 1 year later, I stood in my condo preparing for a small gathering of friends. The space had been transformed from a bare investment into a true home, reflecting both my aesthetic preferences and financial priorities. The second bedroom now hosted regular client meetings, and my consulting business had grown enough to justify hiring an assistant. My relationship with my family had evolved into something complex, but manageable. My father visited Boston regularly, slowly building an independent connection with me. These visits sometimes included Jessica, who had begun asking for financial advice as she contemplated her own path to independence. My mother remained the most difficult relationship, alternating between attempts to reestablish control and periods of cold distance. I maintained consistent boundaries, engaging when healthy interaction was possible, and stepping back when it wasn't. The stolen money was never returned or directly acknowledged again, but its absence had purchased something more valuable than any account balance: clarity about who we truly were to each other. The doorbell announced my first guests, Amanda and Michael, the colleagues whose support had been crucial during my darkest moments. As I welcomed them into my home, I reflected on the unexpected gift hidden within that terrible betrayal, the discovery that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in resilience, in relationships based on respect rather than control, and in the quiet confidence that comes from building something entirely your own. Financial independence had never been just about the money. It was about creating a life where my value wasn't determined by someone else's approval, where security came from within, rather than being granted or withdrawn at another's whim. In trying to break me, my mother had inadvertently forced me to become unbreakable. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately made you stronger? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming family financial abuse and building true independence. Remember that sometimes the people who try to tear you down are actually giving you the opportunity to rebuild yourself better than before. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in creating your own financial fortress, whatever challenges you might face.